This is the Cats Roundtable with John Catsimatidis.
Everywhere around the world, they come to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they come to America.
Good morning, New York. This is the Cats Roundtable. John Catsimatidis here Sunday morning. One great show for you today. We have John Terrett, what's going on in the markets. Andy Spano, 12 years, the Westchester County executive. Susan Birnbaum and Mary Murphy on the new documentary on the NYPD. Stephen McDonald, Governor Pataki, what's going on in our state. Comptroller Mark Levine. Steve Phillip, New York City Partnership. Michael LePetri running against Swazi in Nassau County. Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. Christina Hansen on the carriages in Central Park, and John Sarcone, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District. And like every week, we're going to start off with Michael Stoller and the Real Estate Report.
Good morning, this is Mike Stoller for the Stoller Real Estate Report. What's happening in the residential market in New York City? Lots of new legislation, lots of new taxes, lots of questions are on the market. So today I have a guru on the residential market, both for sale and residential rentals. I have Stephen Kligerman, the president of Brown Harris Stevens Development Marketing. Thanks for being here, Stephen.
Great to be here again, Michael.
So tell me what's going on. We hear about all these things.
What's going on? Well, the second quarter just ended, and the in the sale market, the biggest headline right now is that half of the dollar volume of contracts sold in the second quarter were for apartments priced at $10 million or more. The ultra luxury market is just on fire in New York City.
And who's buying?
Mostly local buyers, actually, mostly domestic buyers. It's not that many international buyers right now. These are mainly primary residences. We have a lot of people who are returning to New York from Florida, moving to New York from the West Coast, and a lot of people upgrading as their situation changes, both financial, or the size of their family, and they're looking for the best product available. And there's some amazing product out there right now, like 1122 Madison Avenue.
What's 1122 Madison?
It's a boutique condominium developed by Victor Segura. Very high-end, great floor plans, beautiful finishes. Another one, 80 Clarkson, which the Zeckendorfs and Atlas Capital are developing, setting record prices for downtown Manhattan. And these apartments, according to the developers, are mainly being bought by domestic purchasers.
Let's talk about the FAIR Act. Explain to my listeners.
Sure. So the FAIR Act was a legislation that was intended to protect tenants from paying real estate brokers high fees, commissions, consulting fees when leasing an apartment. And what the legislation basically says is that if a real estate agent is representing the landlord, which means they either have an exclusive agreement with them or they're advertising the landlord's property, then the landlord must pay their fee. They cannot collect a fee from the tenant. That said, if the tenant responds to an ad for a landlord's property and doesn't rent that property, and then the agent takes them to a different property that they have not advertised, then the tenant, in most cases, is going to be asked to pay the fee. And it gets very complicated for the tenant because they don't know which hat sometimes the broker is putting on and taking off, even though the brokers have to disclose and they give disclosure and they explain these things to the tenant. Often the tenants don't understand when they're being represented and when they're paying the fee and when they're not. And what a lot of these legislations have done is what they've really done is they've limited the availability of supply coming to the market because people won't necessarily move if they think they have to have an expense. And landlords may not want to pay a fee, so they may be more willing to renew a lease versus put something back on the market for a higher rent. So it's constricting supply, which ultimately raises prices for everybody.
So where do you see rents going? I mean, there's a rent freeze.
So there's a rent freeze on rent-regulated apartments. There's no rent freeze, and nor can there be a rent freeze on market rate apartments. Rents continue to rise in New York City because we're undersupplied. It's a typical supply and demand equation. And what this rent freeze, in my opinion, will do is will exponentially increase rents on market rate apartments, because if rent regulated apartments aren't vacated because people's rents aren't going up, then there'll be less supply on the marketplace. And when there's less supply and continued high demand, as we know from other areas of our economy, prices go up. And over the last 5 years, rents have gone from an average of $70 a square foot to well over $100 a square foot. New projects, new developments that are being projected in Manhattan right now are projecting rents anywhere from $110 to $130 a square foot. In Brooklyn,
are you talking about the West Side?
I'm talking about almost anywhere south of 96th Street in Manhattan at this point. We're working on projects in the financial district, Upper East Side, Upper West Side, all of these projects that are beautiful projects, very well amenitized. They're all going to be pushing to an average of $120 a square foot or more in Manhattan. In Gowanus, you're at $100 a square foot, trending upwards. In Queens and Long Island City, you're looking at $90 a square foot. So rents are going up, and all of this legislation is actually having a counter effect of what it was intended to do. It was intended to save people money, and at the end of the day, all of the research, all the analysis points to it actually raising the cost of living in New York City.
With that comment, I'd like to say thank you for being here. You're not the most happy individual today with regard to the world over there, and it's difficult, but people want to live in New York, and if they're going to want to live in New York, they're going to have to pay for it.
That is absolutely true.
So thank you, Steve Kligerman, for being here today.
My pleasure, Michael.
The Cats Roundtable.
And with us this morning is Susan Birnbaum, who's the president and CEO of the New York City Police Foundation, and also Mary Murphy, who is a veteran TV producer and made a documentary about a great hero cop. Stephen McDonald was shot July 12, 1986. And when we showed the documentary, it was July 12th, 2026, the 40th year anniversary. Stephen McDonald died 10 years ago. And this week was a special event. The NYPD this week officially named the Police Academy the NYPD Stephen D. McDonald Police Academy. Well, Susan Birnbaum, you go first.
Well, we had the opportunity to help fund this film, and I met with Mary Murphy, and John, I came to you and asked you to also support this film. And that's because we felt it was important, because the New York City Police Foundation's focus has always been on supporting the men and women of the NYPD and helping ensure they have the tools and the training and the resources they need to keep New York City safe. Detective McDonald's life embodies these values. His message of compassion, forgiveness, and community engagement reflect the ideals of the foundation. And we felt it was important that the next generation of officers could learn about Stephen McDonald's life. And so when Mary Murphy came to me and Scott Monroe from the DEA came to me and said, can you help us with this film? We were proud to help support it. And John, also thank you for also giving us some funding to help support this film.
Well, it was a pleasure to do that. And with us today also is Mary Murphy, who did the documentary film. Would you say a few things?
Yes, first of all, John, thank you very much for the donation you made earlier this year, because that allowed us to actually edit the film and buy some of the historical footage that we needed to really make it a complete documentary. And Susan is the one who really started the ball rolling for us, because I was working with Erin Mulvey, who's a retired federal agent from the Drug Enforcement Administration. I knew that to make a documentary, it's more than just writing it and directing it. You have a whole host of other duties, and that included fundraising. So Erin and I went to Susan, we went to Scott Monroe, and we went to private individuals, and we were able to do this in phases. We started 2 years ago, actually, on this project. I was a young reporter, 27 years old in 1986. Stephen was 29. And when he was shot, it was just heartbreaking. I mean, he's paralyzed from the neck down. His young wife is pregnant, about to have a baby a few months later. And his story always stayed with me. So when Stephen died 30 and a half years later, I knew he had lived a remarkable life, but I didn't feel enough of us really knew about that life and the struggles that he went through on a day-to-day basis. So I thought a film was warranted. And if it wasn't for you and all those individuals, we wouldn't have been able to do it.
Now, there was also a bigger event this week, besides the documentary last week. Tell us about it.
The event with the screening, we had a private screening, or are you talking about the dedication of the police academy?
I'm talking about we had the private screening, I believe, last week, and this week you had the dedication of the police academy.
Yes, so we wanted to thank the people who had donated and the people that appeared in the film. So we arranged to have a private screening at Marymount School of New York, and the people could give feedback if they felt we needed to address certain areas of the film that could be tighter. And it was a very, very good screening. Wonderful response from the people there. Very emotional film. But we also cover a lot of history. That's really what the goal was, to show that, you know, Stephen not only helped people by speaking at precincts about tactical safety on the job, but he spoke to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of school children over those 30 and a half years that he spent in the chair. And he changed a lot of lives. He went overseas. He traveled to Northern Ireland multiple times in the late 90s after the Good Friday Peace Accord was announced. And, you know, he tried to bridge the gap between the Catholics and the Protestants. He went there a week after a terror bombing that killed 29 civilians and 2 unborn babies. And he just felt it was the right thing to do. So the screening was important. We got feedback on the film, but now the goal is to address the feedback, but also to get the distribution. His story should be heard.
Susan Birnbaum, were you there too when they had the dedication?
Yes, I was at the screening, and I was also at the naming of the NYPD Police Academy after Detective McDonald. Commissioner Tisch renamed the academy and put up new signage outside, which was unveiled. His son, Connor, who's a member of the service, and his widow, Patty Ann McDonald, shared their story with recruits, former police commissioners, and former drivers of Stevens, and with many members of the NYPD, including the mayor. And they want every recruit who comes into that building to know the story of the life of Stephen McDonald as he spent 30 years in a wheelchair, forgiving the shooter and forgiving going around the world sharing his message.
When do you think this documentary is going to be able to be seen by the rest of the world?
What we're doing is we are submitting to film festivals, and the hope is that if it gets into a film festival, a distributor might see it and want to get it around the world. We want a global audience to see this. So that's what we're doing right now. We also have a website which gives a lot of background on Stephen and his life, and that's trinityfilmsnyc.com.
Well, thank you so much for both of you coming on. Susan Birnbaum, the New York Police Foundation, does wonderful work. And Mary
Thanks,
Murphy, it's good to meet you again, and thank you for doing what you did, and we'll catch up again real soon.
Thank you very much for everything, John.
Thank you. You are listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. With us today is Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. Tell us what you want to talk about on a Sunday morning.
Well, first of all, Friday I joined senior citizens and realtors from Staten Island to promote my legislation, the Nest Egg Protection Act, John, which would allow for seniors to have a larger tax exemption on the capital gains when they sell their homes. What we have is an issue where seniors want to downsize. After their children move out, they don't have the need to have a 3-story house with 4 bedrooms like we do here on Staten Island. And they are discouraged from selling, John, and downsizing for something that's more appropriate for them that they would like and is more affordable for them because they would get hit with that capital gains tax on all the equity that they've built in their homes over decades. And so my legislation would increase the exemption for what is exempt from capital gains when you sell your house. We also have a matching legislation I'm a co-sponsor of for everybody else because, as you know, those numbers have not been modernized since Bill Clinton was in office in the 90s. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people get hit with tax bills when they try to sell their home. And so that's one of the things that I'm working on right now. But obviously, today is the World Cup. Everyone is excited. At the Ferry Hawk Stadium in Staten Island, we had multiple watch parties throughout the FIFA World Cup tournament. It was very exciting for the community, and we hope that you will continue to use that venue for other types of events that can bring the community together outside of just the minor league baseball. And lastly, I would just point out, I thought it was interesting that Mayor Mondani decided, while we were watching with the community here, Mayor Mondani was watching it at Rikers Island, which I thought was kind of rather an interesting choice for him to want to watch that.
The Rikers Island. I think Rikers Island, they should fix it up. They should spend $1 billion on Rikers Island fixing it up instead of spending $14 billion, $20 billion putting in other jails in the neighborhood near you. And that's my opinion.
That's right, John. I mean, when I ran for mayor, is actually one of my proposals that they should spend money in rehabilitating those older buildings at Rikers Island, but keep it as a prison. Rikers Island, there's a reason why it's on an island. You want to make sure these people are not able to escape into communities, and that's what exactly will happen if we build jails in communities. Now, we were able to fight during that mayor's race with Bill de Blasio and ensure that Staten Island did not receive a prison, which is good, but all the other boroughs are, and I don't think the people in the other boroughs want that, and we see again, this is something that the Democrats in the city council voted for. They all voted for it. So we know who's responsible when you have a jail in your backyard.
Rikers Island is a perfect place to put a jail separately from a Bellevue-type asylum.
Instead, what they're doing is releasing them into communities, John. We know because of this bail law, they're releasing these people, including mentally ill, into communities. And if they're not going to be at that local jail, they're going to be at a local homeless shelter that's also propping up or being propped up all over the city of New York in different neighborhoods. Let's not forget that the mayor signed something to prohibit, once again, ICE from being at Rikers Island. So when people who are here illegally are arrested for a crime, guess what? They get released right back onto the streets. They are no longer allowed to have ICE there to take those individuals at that time to detain and deport them. So, sadly, we've seen a number of people
If they're going to be in a neighborhood jail, they're going to be walking around your neighborhood.
Well, and the perpetrator who killed Richard Williams, the 82-year-old veteran on the subway tracks, that guy was living in a homeless shelter in Brooklyn, and he had 15 prior arrests. He was in the country illegally. Had ICE been at Rikers Island, he would have been turned over and deported instead of on the streets to kill that veteran. And the same thing with Laken Riley's murderer, arrested here in New York, released because of the bail law and sanctuary policy, went to Georgia, killed Laken Riley, a young college student there who should be alive today.
Nicole Malliotakis, Congresswoman, thank you for coming on this Sunday morning, and let's catch up again real soon.
Thanks so much, John. Great to be with you.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is Governor George Pataki. Governor, I understand that you and Senator Lindsey Graham were very close, and I mean, it came as a shock to all of us. And how did you feel?
John, you're right. It was a tremendous shock. We both got elected for the first time around the same time. He was a congressman, I was a new governor, and we just would continually talk and share thoughts and share ideas. He did events for me in South Carolina. I did events for him in New York, and throughout his time, his many years in the Senate, I just had a tremendous respect for him and understanding of his patriotism and commitment to America. And the other thing, John, as we all know, he had a tremendous commitment to the people of Ukraine. And in fact, he had just come back from his last trip to Ukraine, meeting with Zelensky when he had that heart attack. So it's a big loss for America. It really is. And, in this era of partisanship, Lindsey Graham was one of those who could talk respectfully with Democrats and they with him. And I just fear that it's going to be very hard to replace someone of Lindsey Graham's stature.
I would say it's almost impossible because he had a lot of respect on both sides of the aisle, and people respected him. And, well, God bless. And
you're completely right. God bless Lindsey Graham. He was a great person. I actually got to meet his sister. They were extremely close, and I'm sure he's very happy and proud that she is filling the remainder of his term. It's just a big loss, but, this is America. We just have to look forward and continue to fight for tomorrow.
what do you see is going on right now? It seems like we have quite a mess on our hands.
Yeah, John, quite a mess is an understatement. I always believed in New York. I still believe in New York, but we are seeing a state that's in decline. We're losing people. We just had a report that we lost $11 billion in tax revenue in the last 6 months. You cannot tax your way into prosperity. This state is spending and taxing itself into decline. And there will be bright spots here and there. New York City will always be New York City, but we're just seeing the greatness of New York erode right before our eyes. And it's just tragic because we're doing it to ourselves. The politicians in Albany, the one-partisan Democratic overwhelming majorities that control Albany, are destroying the state, not, like with an atomic bomb, but with taxes, regulations, rules, spending, giveaways that are just eroding what I still believe is the greatest state in America, now the greatest in spite of our politicians and not because of it.
People still love New York. There's still a lot of, I'll tell you, there's still a lot of traffic. But they created the traffic jams. I mean, they got congestion pricing, but they're creating the congestion to create congestion pricing. And you go up and down the streets, you see so many vacant stores.
You're more likely to get run down by a bicycle than a car these days. And it's part of the we have to save the planet climate mentality. I'm all for green energy. We need all types of energy, including green energy and electric, natural gas, and other sources of energy. But it's just another blow to those who want to create jobs, open a store, hire people in New York City and New York State. And yes, New York City is a unique place. It will always be great. But I fear that we were always the financial capital, not of America. We were the financial capital of the world. We're losing that. Every day you see this erosion in the excitement about people who create jobs and open stores and hire people to be in New York State. And it's tragic because the politicians at Albany and the politicians at City Hall are doing it to us. And they're just either clueless or don't care that their policies are very destructive. John, just one last fact. In the last 10 years, the New York State budget has increased by over $100 billion. This is when we have a population that is stable. This is when we don't have Wall Street creating the headquarters and jobs like they used to, and yet we're spending $100 billion a year more. The only way you can do that is by borrowing and taxing, and ultimately that destroys the state. And you look at California, you look at Illinois, and now you look at New York, and you see a state in decline. And it doesn't have to be, and we just have to believe in tomorrow and fight to change it.
Thank you, Governor Pataki, for coming on this Sunday morning, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.
Thank you, John. Always great being on with you.
Thank you. Today, we are speaking to the New York City Comptroller, Mark Levine. Well, Mark Levine, give us an update of what the heck is going on in New York City, because nobody really knows.
Oh, man, John, thank you first for having me on the show. Boy, man, it's been a busy summer in New York City. There's so much to talk about on our budget and our economy. But I got to start, John, with news that came out just in the last couple of days about rents. Rents in Manhattan and other parts of New York City are at their all-time highest. Did you see this, John?
I saw it. It's an all-time high because I understand that there might be as many as 20, 30,000 apartments that are vacant because people can't afford to do anything with them.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But first, the numbers are pretty incredible. So median rents in Manhattan, $5,295 per month. It's insane. And in Brooklyn, it's not much better, $4,350. And I know your listeners understand that those are rents that are out of reach not just of low-income people, but of a nurse, of a social worker, of a firefighter. These are really outrageously high rents. And the problem is we just have a shortage of supply of homes in New York City. And you pointed to one of the reasons, which is that in rent-stabilized buildings, we have tens of thousands of apartments that are sitting vacant. And your listeners are probably shocked. Why would a landlord leave an apartment vacant? Well, unfortunately, the law is very difficult. When apartments become vacant and they need very expensive renovations, sometimes a six-figure price tag, the owners of the buildings are not able to raise their rents enough to cover the cost of that renovation. And so many of these apartments remain vacant. This has got to be fixed. We've got to activate these homes so they can go back on the market, and it can be done in a way that preserves affordability but allows for more flexibility for landlords to be able to pay for the renovations. But in general, we have a shortage. We probably have a shortage of 500,000 apartments across New York City. And in part, it's because there's just not enough financing. And so my office is doing something about this, John. We're going to invest $4 billion of pension money in financing housing all over New York City. New construction, renovating, preserving existing buildings, and converting former vacant office buildings into homes. This is going to be like a shot of adrenaline into housing production all over New York City. I'm super excited about it.
Let me ask you a silly question. We know that what the problems with NYCHA is, the New York City Housing Authority. There's 300,000 apartments there. But the big item is like 30%, 40% of the people never pay rent. But nobody wants to make them homeless either. So what do you do with that?
Yeah, rent payment has actually gone down citywide since the pandemic. During the middle of the emergency, we had a pause on rental payments for many tenants. Understandably, people were out of work at the time. But it's been hard to get back to where we were pre-pandemic, and this has been a challenge for all kinds of housing, particularly for NYCHA. And as you say, you don't want to push people out because then they land in the homeless shelters, and we don't want that. That's a tragedy for families. So I just think we need to help coax people back into paying their rent because we do need it for the operations of NYCHA. But, I got to remind you, John, people are suffering economically because we've had a very bad job situation. Jobs are totally flat in New York, and we do need to do better and get jobs growing again so that families can pay rent and we don't have problems in NYCHA and elsewhere. And I don't know if you follow this, but job creation is basically just flat in New York. The only area where it's growing is in healthcare, specifically home healthcare aides. And it's partly because we have a lot more competition from other parts of the country, places like Texas and Florida and other states. So we've also got to up our game to get job growth going again in New York, and this is something I'm all in on.
How can we induce people to build more homes when they're putting on so many restrictions?
There's a lot of reasons why New York is behind on building housing. One, historically, has been our zoning's been very, very restrictive, but that was largely fixed. The Adams administration passed something called City of Yes. I'm sure you've covered it here. That's going to make it easier to build from a zoning perspective. We've talked about the financing challenge, which I'm working on with our investments, but it just costs too damn much to build in New York. We're seeing average apartment costs of $750,000 for low-end projects, well over $1 million for some projects, and it's outrageous. It is partly the fault of city government, which has so many rules and regulations and makes it very, very difficult to get approval for permits. If you want to get approval for building affordable housing in New York, it probably takes 12 to 18 months to get the paperwork done, and that's beyond getting the mortgage and getting the zoning. That's just getting the paperwork approved. We've got to do better. I think technology can maybe speed that up. I think you should get approval in 12 to 18 days, not 12 to 18 months. And in the buildings department, the same problems, just takes too long. You know what expediters are, John, where people hire staff? It's crazy. You have to hire someone just to get your paperwork through. Even the city hires expediters to get its own projects built. It's really outrageous. So we've got to clear out the bureaucracy and make it easier to build in New York City, lower the cost. That will help lower the rents long term. supply and demand, John. You know this as a businessman.
I know that.
If we want people to grow here and invest here, and most importantly, we want housing that New Yorkers can afford, and that requires expanding the supply. We can do that, but it's going to require the kind of work we're talking about.
Mark Levine, we're out of time. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. Have a great one. Be well.
You are listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. And with us today is Christina Hansen, taking care of the carriages in Central Park. As I understand, the city council is not with you. I understand the mayor is not with you. What the heck is going on?
The carriage horses, of course, are very well taken care of. Nothing about that has changed. And we had a hearing, but it took almost 3 hours for any of the carriage people or the TWU folks to even get to testify before the committee. And a lot of the committee left before the carriage drivers could share their stories about what they would lose with this bill. Council people were signing on before the hearing was even done. Of course, the speaker came out the day before and said that she supports this wholeheartedly. The only thing that's really changed recently is, we did have this tragic accident, but it's the first one ever. And as Councilmember De La Rosa said, look, we've had a helicopter accident where a whole family of tourists was sadly and tragically killed, and we didn't ban helicopters. We didn't rush out to do something. There seems to be a lot of stuff going on here that has nothing to do with safety, and it has nothing to do with the care of the horses.
Governor Patterson, you were in the studio with us.
I was not really sure how I feel about this. Christina, maybe you could enhance my understanding. You did say that there hadn't been any accidents of this site of this kind in a long time, right?
Right. Well, in any kind of sort of collective memory of the Central Park carriages that give rides to tourists in Central Park, we've never had a fatality. So going back well before World War II, maybe somebody got into a carriage accident in the park in the 1880s when there were lots of private carriages, in the same way that people might have car accidents or bicycle accidents or e-bike accidents back then. I mean, obviously no e-bikes then, but I mean, in terms of maybe there was an accident then, but in terms of a tourist in a carriage in Central Park, it's never happened until, a month ago.
So what you're really saying is that what happened a month ago, as tragic as it was an outlier. It was
absolutely.
Go ahead.
Absolutely an outlier. I said absolutely an outlier, but these various special interest groups, and there's a lot of money behind it, whether it's the animal rights people who, no matter what we do, think that you shouldn't have horses anywhere in the city. A lot of the testimony yesterday was saying horses don't belong in cities, even though horses built cities, and even though the city of New York employs police horses to patrol Times Square, Madison Square Garden, lead the Knicks parade. There was no discussion about that, but lots of discussion about how horses just don't belong in modern cities. They just don't belong here anymore.
I've heard before that some real estate guys really want your property to build new kinds of property. So is this a real estate ploy? Have they taken care of the politicians that be to make sure that you get rid of the barns on 11th Avenue?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was what got Bill de Blasio involved, 12 years ago when he became mayor. Was the stables on the west side of 37th and 38th Street. They're zoned for 70 stories there, mixed-use, luxury, high-rises. And since that time, they've actually demolished the buildings between it, but those empty lots really can't be built on so long as there are horses there. So there's lots of real estate interest in getting rid of the carriage horses because that property there, which soon will be right on the Hudson Boulevard park that they're building over the Amtrak lines.
And I also hear that there's some people that want to create electric cars to be in Central Park.
Yeah, there's a whole discussion about electric carriages. There was a discussion about electric cars. Now they moved to electric carriages.
What's the name of the company that's supposedly making big donations in Albany and the city?
The organization NYClass makes lots of donations, but there's also a gentleman named Josh Fox, who's given donations and met with Randy Mastro last year about electric carriages or some sort of replacement for the carriage horses. Of course, there's people that donate to the Conservancy. We don't even know who they are because the Conservancy, being a 501c3, doesn't have to disclose its donors. But after 168 years of the park being designed for horse carriages, came out and said, we're against carriages. We don't want horses in our park anymore.
Why don't you get somebody to do an investigation how many donations that these people made? And then we could turn you could turn it over to the U.S. Attorney to do something about it.
Yeah, we're certainly working all these angles because there's something definitely amiss with what's going on with the Conservancy.
Well,
and of course, the proliferation of e-bikes and the speed and the various delivery services that race through Central Park, it's alienation of public parkland. Through Amazon cargo bike deliveries is not a park use, and they've basically taken over the carriage drives. That space is now all for e-deliveries, and people can't even cross the carriage drives. They can't use the carriage drives for even recreational bike rides.
Understood.
They can't. Yeah, it's
now we're out of time, and Christina Hansen, let's hope that the common sense prevails. Thank you so much, Christina Hansen, and you're with the TWU, Transport Workers Union, and you're the shop steward, and let's pray you save those jobs and save those horses.
Absolutely. We got to keep going in Central Park. It's the heart of the city.
The Cats Roundtable.
And with us today, Andy Spano, the great county executive from Westchester County, and he was county executive for 12 years, and you have a new book. Where would you like to start?
I think I'd like to start with being 90.
You only look 65 or 70.
Sometimes I feel 90. I woke up that day, and I didn't realize that I would feel that way. I got up and I said, I'm 90 years old. I made it. Now I can do anything I want because everything is behind me. Everything's gravy after it. It made me feel completely different. And then my book came out. And I wrote the book because I watched my grandkids. And I said to myself, my God, when I grew up, people went through so much to get where they are. And struggles were a part of life. And I think that helped us. So I wanted to write this book for them, so they could see how I grew up, what my relatives gave to me, and how much I appreciate it. And I named the book Watch the Hands. And I wrote a second book, said, don't listen to the mouth. Because my grandfather used to say to me, guarda le mani, non ascoltare la bocca, which means watch the hands, don't listen to the mouth. And what he meant, the mouth can say anything, but you watch the hands and watch what they do, watch what people do, and then you know who they are.
That is great stuff. I mean, the old Italians and the old Greeks used to do that all the time, and I learned a lot from my father, who actually grew up with the Italians and worked for the Italian government, and that is wonderful stuff.
Yeah, but my mother had the greatest one, John. You'd appreciate this. She used to say, don't be ashamed to put your hand in the toilet. And what she meant by that is don't be ashamed of doing hard work and any kind of work, because you got to respect that. That's something you do. And, when you get into difficult times, you don't worry about it. You just go do the work and get yourself out of the problem.
Tell us about the book. You put one book out now, but you're going to put another book out afterwards?
Well, when I was writing it just for the family. Then I figured, my experiences were interesting, and I started doing it around that, weaving the family experience into what I thought would be interesting to the general public. But then I saw that I thought I was writing too much. So I broke it up into two books. One book goes from when I'm born to when I become county executive, and the other one goes through when I'm county executive to the present. And the first book is a lot of familiar stuff. The second book is more in terms of the politics and what I went through and the people I dealt with. I was critically involved in 9/11. I was one of the founders of the United Federation of Teachers, founding members of the teachers with Shanker and those guys. I've been through a lot. I've been through the 60s. I worked with drug addicts. I worked with gangs on the West Side. And I thought all that might be interesting to people and what I learned from that experience.
Are you going to have a third book that you want to run for governor too?
Yeah. I said to myself, what could I do after 90? And I said, I could run for governor because, even though I'm a Democrat, I think both parties have been responsible for the problems we have today. The Democrats got too intellectual and the Republicans got, too involved in earning money and helping people who are wealthy. That's the way I see it. And I think that both of them lost sight of the general public and the people who really do the work. The American dream isn't about getting a house, getting a car, getting a great job, having a lot of money. The American dream is about just what the Declaration of Independence says. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's the American dream. And the American dream is supposed to be permeated and helped by the government who is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we have gotten away from all that. And I think that I would love to be younger and run for office and work on those two principles, changing things. The education system you keep throwing money after it, and it never gets any better. Why? Because it's the system that's wrong, not the teachers, not the fact that it doesn't have money. There's more money available. We have the most expensive healthcare system in the world, and it's not the best system. There's enough money to do what we have to do right now, but we're doing it in the wrong way.
Well, Andy Spano, it was a good talking to you.
Yeah, well, I just want one more comment, John. It's not that Biden and Trump are too old. They're just not old enough.
Thank you so much. You are listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. John Terry is with us. John, give us a report. The markets are not feeling the pain of what's going on, even though oil has gone up. I guess the war's still going on.
Good morning, John. Well, three things dominated Wall Street last week. One was Kevin Walsh appearing on Capitol Hill. The other was the Iran war, which, as you say, does appear to be escalating. And then AI investment worries. And there was a new Chinese bot that seemed to come out on Friday that rattled the markets as well, called Moonshot. Let me deal with them individually. First of all, Kevin Walsh saying inflation, the fight is not over. He was speaking after CPI and PPI came in much lower in June after that memorandum of understanding between Tehran and Washington lowered gas prices. But unfortunately, that was June, and this is July, and we know that gas prices are going back up again, and crude oil prices too. Though CPI was, in fact, down in June, the greatest amount in 6 years. You've got to go back to 2020 before you see a decline like that. The Iran situation, of course, is ongoing. The Strait of Hormuz seems to be escalating. The AI woes, well, this comes every other day. Literally every other day, Wall Street worries about this and the amount of money that's been spent on AI and whether they'll ever see a proper return. There seems to be a chip route, pretty much every single day that comes. As for the markets, well, they have, of course, been up, and they haven't been too rattled by what's going on in the Middle East. But on Friday, they were deeply in the red. Second losing week in a row, and that was caused by the things that I just set out. Company news, Netflix showing slowing growth again. They did that in April. They were down 10% then. They did it midweek. They're down another 7% on Friday. The banks had stellar earnings, of course, led by JP Morgan Chase, which turned in the biggest bank earnings for a quarter ever, at $21.2 billion. That was helped by IPOs, of course. Apple on Friday became the biggest company in the world by market capitalization, overtaking NVIDIA. They also are in talks with the DOJ to settle a 2024 antitrust case. 12 states are suing Paramount, Skydance, and Discovery Warner over an antitrust issue. The crypto story of the week, it's 1 year since the Genius Act was signed by President Trump. This gives a framework to stable coins. Stable coins are a kind of cryptocurrency that are basically linked to tangible things like the dollar, for example. And in the week ahead, big earnings for second quarter, big names, really big. Alphabet, Tesla, and Intel among them. John.
SpaceX, what happened?
Yes, SpaceX, good point. Well, unfortunately, regarding SpaceX, they had a tremendous start with the stock up well over $200. On Friday, that stock was down significantly, sort of around the $123 mark. And I think basically the problem is they had that bad launch midweek. And also, I think, you can't go on. The excitement surrounding the IPO is dying off now, and we will see the price come down. In other words, I think it's a long-term investment, not one you want to be looking at every day if you're lucky enough to own them.
Thank you for calling in this Sunday morning, like every Sunday morning, and thanks for the update.
Thank you, John. See you next Sunday. Thank you.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is the first assistant U.S. attorney in the Northern District of New York, John Sarcone. John Sarcone, you're considered the first assistant U.S. attorney of the Northern District because I guess the way I heard the story, and please correct me, is that the two U.S. senators did not put a blue slip in other words, allow you to sit before the entire Senate to become the full U.S. attorney?
Yes, that's correct, John. Thank you very much also for the opportunity. It's a complicated situation. There are 13 people who are appointed by President Trump that are in the position that I am. So when I was first appointed, and same thing with Jay Clayton when he was appointed too, he couldn't get the blue slips, but the judges voted to keep him there, which is a really that's on appeal. There's a case that's on appeal right now, and eventually it'll get to the U.S. Supreme Court as to the final answer. But in the meantime, I'm here running the office, and this is my third title since I was appointed by President Trump and took the oath of office on March 17th of 2025.
Because of the fact that the Republicans have the 51 or 52 seats in the U.S. Senate, you would get confirmed if they gave you the blue slips. So this is a technicality that if the hometown senators don't give you the blue slip, then you can't sit in front of the entire Senate.
That's exactly what's going on.
Now, is this by law or by tradition?
It's a rule of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's their rule, and until they change that rule, and President Trump has called for that to be changed, we're going to be stuck in limbo, and so are other nominees. You see our great...
Now, let me ask one more question. If there was one Republican senator in the state, then that one Republican senator could give you the blue slip?
That wouldn't count. The rule is that both senators in the state have to give the blue slip.
Understood. Okay, go ahead. What else? This is big revelations. The normal person that lives in New York doesn't know that, or any other state doesn't know that. The normal person.
Right. Exactly. And it hasn't slowed me down, though, John. And we've met him many times and have had engaging conversations. The Northern District of New York is the largest district in the state of New York. It spans 32 counties, more than 30,000 square miles, and home to 3.4 million New Yorkers. Okay, we're talking from Ulster County up to the Canadian border, over to St. Lawrence County, and down to Broome County through Onondaga. It's huge. So I have to say that when I got here, there was a lot of hostility from the media, right? I mean, we've had the Times Union, which is owned by Hearst Media, which you know who owns Hearst Media, George Soros. And then you had other media outlets up here that completely bombarded me with this narrative that I am somehow a stooge, I'm a Trump loyalist, and that I'm unqualified to be in this position, that I lacked prosecutorial experience. So while they had this campaign going on to marginalize and to tarnish me, the judges had to make a decision whether or not they were going to vote for me, which is what the law, which is being challenged in court, says. Well, the judges didn't vote for me, and I accept that. But the point is, they thought they were going to get rid of me, and guess what? They didn't, because the Justice Department wants me here, and I am here serving at the pleasure of the Attorney General, or the acting Attorney General at this time. And I have to say, that narrative of lack of prosecutorial experience fell on its face when my friend last month and mentor and former law professor Jay Carlisle published an op-ed addressing my background, professional experience, and my capabilities. And I have to say, a great gratitude to him and gratitude to the New York Law Journal for publishing it. But guess what? Hearst Media, George Soros's outlet, they refused to publish it. And so did another big outlet. They refused to publish it. They don't want the public to know.
First Assistant U.S. Attorney John Zarcone, they've created all politics in this situation.
That's exactly right. They embedded themselves. They do everything they could to marginalize me. And this is going on, as you could see, right before our eyes with our great acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche. He's being grilled by one side of the aisle, but it's ridiculous. He's done an amazing job. I don't think we've had an Attorney General in the recent memory that's done as much as he has done in 100 days.
Is there anything else you want to tell the people? But me and you have to keep pushing this, because the American people should know the truth.
I just wanted to say quickly that, in my first year leading the Northern District of New York, we achieved such great success, okay? So based on the statistics from the Executive Office for the United States Attorney, my office filed 21% more cases per assistant U.S. attorney than both the national average and the average large district, while also filing 170% more cases per assistant U.S. attorney than the average district within the Second Circuit, which encompasses 6 districts across New York and Connecticut and Vermont. So I am doing the job here that President wants me to do, that the Attorney General wants me to do, and doing it in record fashion. And as a result of that, we have made hundreds of arrests of violent criminals and taken them off the streets, seized thousands of fentanyl pills, 2,100 kilos of methamphetamine, cocaine, and it's astronomical. And all the we've had the biggest seizure of illegal guns in the history of the Northern District just last summer here in the capital region of New York. And John, why am I doing this? Because you know as well as I do, New York has a failed system when it comes to crime and fighting crime, with the senseless cashless bail, which doesn't work, especially in these small little communities. So I'm doing my part to help out, and I could say that I've got great partners with the New York State Police and with sheriff's offices throughout my 32 counties and local law enforcement and district attorneys.
Well, let's continue this conversation again, and thank you so much, and we'll talk again real soon.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Take care.
The Cats Roundtable.
If you ever miss a segment or want to hear it again, go to WABCRadio.com, go to podcasts, go to minicast, and play back your favorite segment. Thank you for being with us for the Cats Roundtable Local Edition, the #1 show on Sunday mornings in New York. Keep listening to us for the Cats Roundtable National Edition between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. So we'll be back to you in a few minutes after the news.